Okay, kids, what we're going to do today is we are going to talk about statistical questions. A statistical question is a question which anticipates that there will be different answers in the data. What I'd like you to do is use your book to follow along with this presentation. That's in case you can't read any of the actual graphics and pictures on the video. Okay? So anyways, pause the video, take your book out, and then we'll get started. So, statistical questions. If we want to think about statistical questions, one of the things that we need to understand is that statistical questions are about data. Data is information that is gathered. We've used the word data a lot in this classroom, and you can see that you could take all these numbers and they're all over the place, and this is data. This is just raw. It's all over there. And what we would want to do is, if we wanted to start using this data statistically, we would organize it and put it into various visuals. Okay? So that leads us to the next question. What exactly is statistics? Well, statistics is the science of collecting, organizing, and analyzing large amounts of data. So if this was all data that we had gathered, statistics would be all about organizing that, analyzing it, and figuring out what it's all about. Now, how do we organize or show this data? It is easiest to organize and to show large amounts of data by using visuals. Visuals such as the box and whiskers plot, the pie chart, the good old line plot, the bar graph, and the histogram. Okay? Now, these are all various ways in which we take large amounts of data and put them into something visual so that we can make sense of them right away. Okay? So if you take a look at these, you got your bar graph. Okay, now a bar graph is different than a histogram. You can see that a bar graph is based on individual numbers, whereas a histogram is set up on intervals. And we talked about that a little bit in class. You can see you have a line plot and you have a pie chart. Pie charts are all based on percentages. And then, of course, the good old box and whiskers plot, where we have our median, our whiskers, and our first quartile, third quartile, okay, and the maximum amount and the minimum amount. But anyways, these are all ways in which we show data, organize it and show it. Now, in your book, you'll see that there is a question that begins with, what is the statistical question? Mr. Borden wants to ask his class a question that will give several different answers. So he wants a statistical question. Which question could he ask? Well, one of the questions is, what is the area of one sheet of notebook paper? The other question he could ask is, how many sheets of paper do you use each week? Now, which of these questions will give you a definite answer, and which of these questions might give you several different answers, depending on who you asked? That's the key, is whether or not you'll get many different answers or just one specific answer. So, if we look at our questions, okay, and we do that, we'll see that in the book it goes on and it says, the question Mr. Borden should ask is, how many sheets of paper do you use each week? So it's not the size or the area of the paper that's a statistical question. It is how many sheets of paper you use each week. Okay? This is a statistical question, or a question that anticipates there will be different answers. And we can kind of assume there would be, because some kids use more paper than others. Mr. Borden can display the various answers in the data using a bar graph. Okay, the bar graph shows the information collected. And you notice that this bar graph, of course, has a title, sheets of paper used by students each week, and then it has the number of students, and then it has the number of sheets of paper. And if you look at the graph, you can see, when you read it, you can say, oh, one student uses 5 sheets a week. One student uses 10 sheets a week. 2 students will use 15 sheets per week. And then you could probably figure out 20 sheets a week will be used by 4 students. 6 students will use 25 sheets a week, and then you can see where your data begins to taper off. Okay, so the data here, you could look at this chart and right away you could say, okay, most kids are using somewhere between 20 and 30 sheets of paper each week. Okay, one student is using a whole lot of paper, the maximum amount being 40 and the minimum amount being 5. So one student doesn't use very much, one student uses a lot. The average is somewhere around in here at 25 or so. Okay? So these are statistical questions. Okay? The number of sheets you would use each week. Let's take a look at some other example questions and see if you can figure out which is statistical and not statistical. Okay? Tell whether or not each question is statistical. What was the low temperature each day last week? Well, the temperature, ask yourself, will the temperature be the same every single day? Well, obviously not. So your data that you collect will give you different answers. So yes, this is a statistical question. Okay? The next question is, what color shirt am I wearing? Well, think about that. Is it statistical or not statistical? Well, that's a pretty specific answer, isn't it? So it is not statistical. Okay? The next one, what size shoes do the students in your class wear? Well, if you collected data on the shoe size of the students, you'd probably find that you have many different sizes, so therefore you would have multiple different answers. So yes, it is statistical. Okay, so there you have it. There's a quick rundown of what a statistical question is. It is a question which anticipates or thinks that there will be different answers in the data. Okay?